You don't need another massive target to feel worthy. What you need is something that actually works, something that keeps you steady even when life gets complicated. Most people begin with energy, they set inspiring goals, they map out plans, and then nothing happens. The pattern repeats. They blame themselves for failing, not because they lacked desire, but because they never had a system to keep them on course. Here is the reality. Goals sound appealing, but they don't carry you when you're exhausted, anxious, or overloaded. Systems do. A reliable system makes daily life simpler. It helps you advance without having to decide every minute. It doesn't depend on motivation. It runs on repeatable action. This recording isn't built on hype. It's about showing you how to construct a life that actually supports you. Genuine habits, clear structure, meaningful change. If you are fed up with restarting, this will help you move forward for good. Decide on actions that reflect the life you want. You don't gain the life you imagine by waiting for it to arrive. You gain it by making the small daily choices that point you in that direction. You gain it by selecting behaviors that align with the person you intend to become. That's where everything begins. You don't need a massive blueprint. You don't need the perfect condition. You need to ask yourself, what kind of life do I truly want? Then make sure what you do today lines up with that vision. A lot of people say they want an improved life, but their behavior tells a different story. They say they want health, but their daily decisions prioritize ease and convenience. They say they want wealth, but they fritter away hours and avoid hard work. They say they want peace, but they feed their mind with negativity and noise. You don't obtain your desires by talking about them. You obtain them by proving them through your conduct. That's the gap between those who progress and those who remain stuck. Growth is not writing goals and hoping something miraculous happens. Growth is building a life that mirrors your core values. Every minor choice compounds. You either choose actions that suit your future or choices that keep you anchored in the past. And you are making that choice every single day, whether you notice it or not. So ask yourself, do your daily actions reflect the life you claim to want? Systems matter more than goals. A goal is something you note down once. A system is a way of living you follow every day. A goal says I want to be fit. A system says I move my body each morning. A goal says I want financial freedom. A system says I save and invest a portion of my income regularly. A goal is a wish. A system is evidence. The person who builds a system doesn't need to hope for change. They make it happen. Systems win because they are created by your daily choices, not dramatic declarations, not hype, but steady behavior that accumulates over time. If you want to transform your life, don't begin with an imagined future. Begin with your next move. Ask yourself what a better life demands from you right now. If you want more calm, maybe you stop reaching for your phone the moment you wake up. If you want strength, maybe you stop excusing missed workouts. If you want success, maybe you stop waiting until you feel ready and you simply start. Don't overanalyze. Start small, but make sure what you start is aligned. You don't have to do everything at once. You only need to take the right next step. It's not about intensity. It's about direction. When your actions mirror the life you want, progress becomes a natural consequence. You don't need to force it. You simply need to keep doing the work. It won't be easy every day. Some days you'll be drained. Some days you'll want to quit. That's when you return to this truth. If I truly want this, I must live like it. Not speak about it, not wait for it, but live like it. The issue for most people is living in two separate worlds. One is their imagination, where they picture the life they want. The other is their daily routine, where they actually exist. When those two worlds don't line up, frustration grows. You feel stuck because your routines are built around the wrong identity. Change doesn't stem from wanting something new. It comes from doing something different. You don't need sharper ideas. You need better patterns. You don't need more inspiration. You need systems that start with choosing actions consistent with the life you want, not the life you're trying to escape. Begin with your morning. Is it shaped by purpose or reaction? Do you begin the day on your own terms, or do you let the outside world set your mood? What you do in the first hour reveals how committed you are to creating a better life. Next, examine your time. How much of your day goes to things that actually move you forward? Not busywork or distractions disguised as productivity, but actions that align with your top priorities. If not much time is spent on meaningful activity, your system needs fixing. Now consider your energy. Who or what takes it? If most of your energy is drained by stress, endless scrolling, comparison, or people who deplete you, reclaim it, because without energy, even the smartest system won't function. Protect your focus as if it matters, because it does. Your energy, your time, your habits, these are your tools. Use them deliberately. When they are aligned with who you want to become, you don't chase motivation. You simply show up. You stay steady. Over time, things change. This is how people transform. Not by setting one big annual goal, but by deciding each day to live like the future matters. You don't wait for life to be flawless. You build better days, one action at a time. That's where real power begins: daily alignment. You don't need to control the result. You need to control the process. The outcome will follow when the process is strong. So ask yourself right now, what do I do each day? What do I do each week? What habits do I keep even when nobody sees? Those are the elements of your system, and that system either constructs your future or blocks it. If you want to feel proud of your life, you must be proud of your behavior. If you want to feel in control, take control of the things that shape you, your choices, habits, and routines. You already know what helps and what harms you. Be honest enough to admit it and bold enough to change it. You don't need more time. You need clearer direction. You don't need to feel ready. You need to begin. Because when your life becomes a mirror of your system, motivation becomes unnecessary. You wake with purpose and sleep with the satisfaction of progress. Choose actions that reflect the life you want and make them your standard, non-negotiable. When chaos arrives, and it will, your system will keep you steady because you won't be reacting to life anymore. Build your system brick by brick. You don't rise to the level of your dreams, you fall to the level of your system, and the system is created by what you repeat, not by what you say, not by what you plan. Build it with care, live it daily, and remember your system is your future in action. Design it intentionally, or you will drift into someone else's plan. The cost of not choosing wisely is high. The life you want isn't distant. It's hidden in what you do next. Make that next move count. Let it reflect your values, your standards, your future. When your actions and your vision begin to match, you don't just wish for change, you live it day after day. This is why the message we share at Momentum Audiobooks matters. Systems create lasting momentum that shows up long after motivation fades. You don't have to force yourself into a life that doesn't fit. The common mistake is building change on pressure and sheer willpower until you crash. If your habits feel unnatural, you won't keep them. If you cannot sustain something, it will not create lasting change. True transformation begins by shaping patterns that match who you are now, where you are right now, and how you live your life today, not an idealized future you haven't become yet. When you attempt to adopt habits that feel foreign, resistance grows. Daily life becomes a struggle and avoidance follows. It's not laziness. It's mismatch. You're trying to live by someone else's rules. Stop treating change as punishment. A well-designed system should feel like adding value to your life, not taking it away. When you craft patterns that align with your temperament and schedule, you create ease. Ease makes repetition possible. Repetition makes results inevitable. The long-term winners in life are not those who push hardest in short bursts. They're the ones who find a rhythm that suits them and show up consistently. That rhythm is built by respecting your limits and using your strengths, not fighting them. You don't have to wake up at dawn if your focus peaks in the evening. You don't have to read dozens of books if your greatest insight comes from slow reflection. You don't need to journal every morning if thought flows better during a walk. There are no universal rules. What matters is discovering what fits you and repeating it. If it's unsustainable, it's useless. That is where self-awareness translates to power. Not emotional jargon, but clear observation. What energizes you, what drains you, what helps you think clearly, and what derails you. If you don't know your own patterns, you'll keep borrowing ones that look successful online but fail in real life. Begin with observation, not judgment. Notice when you're most productive and when you waste energy. Identify one effortless habit you already have. That existing behavior is your entry point. Attach a new intention to it, rather than inventing an entirely new routine. If you naturally enjoy evening walks, use that time for reflection or planning. If silence is your sanctuary in the morning, protect it and use it intentionally. If coffee at a certain time is already ritualized, use that moment as a cue to review priorities. Sometimes the trick isn't adding more but giving new meaning to what you already do. Your objective is not perfection but function. Create patterns that pull you forward rather than push you through force. When a system fits, it feels supportive. That support keeps you showing up even when energy fades or life complicates. It becomes part of your identity. It is no longer a to-do but the way you move through your day. Change happens not from grand, isolated acts but from tiny, repeatable choices that are manageable every day. If 10 minutes of focused work is all you can handle, start there. If a single healthier meal is what you can guarantee, begin there. If the only peaceful time you can find is before bed, use it. The power lies in consistency, not scale. Your habits should provide you dignity, not guilt. When your patterns resonate with your values, you start to look forward to them because they honor the person you want to be, not because they're easy. Self-respect grows when your behavior reflects your beliefs. Recognize that patterns change. What works now might not be right 6 months later, and that's normal. Systems are not static. You will grow, and your routines should evolve with you. Growth is not a reset button, it is refinement. Maybe you add a new habit slowly. Maybe you drop one that no longer serves. Flexibility combined with commitment is the key to longevity in any system. Do not confuse structure with oppression. Discipline can exist without strain. The most effective systems free you. They reduce complexity and provide clarity. If your daily rhythm feels like a burden, redesign it. Do not quit in frustration. Instead, reshape. Think in terms of anchors. Small, repeatable actions that ground you. A morning stretch, a brief planning moment before work, a phone-free evening walk. These anchors may seem small, but they generate stability. Rhythm keeps you steady when chaos shows up. Life will bring disruption. You will have low-energy days, moments of distraction, and periods of stress. Systems designed around your identity create a home you can return to naturally. Not because you're forcing discipline, but because the patterns feel familiar and sustaining. That's the essence of a strong system. It brings you back to balance without constant negotiation. You won't need motivation each day. You rely on routines that are integrated with who you are. This is how momentum persists. Not through self-imposed martyrdom, but through thoughtfully chosen habits that feel right. These systems hold you during tough stretches and amplify you during good ones. They are built to protect peace, sharpen focus, and sustain health. They help you move forward even when willpower is depleted. This is the long-term strategy. If a habit feels disingenuous, you will abandon it. If it aligns with your life, it will grow with you and keep you consistent. Start small and be intentional. Anchor yourself to what already exists and expand gently. Respect your energy and capitalize on your natural inclinations. Replace performance pressure with curiosity. Is this habit helping me? If it is, keep it. If not, modify it. The aim is to design a day that supports meaning and momentum rather than draining your resources. Over time, small actions compound into significant change. The The quiet accumulation of small, right choices is more powerful than dramatic but unsustainable efforts. Create a system that rewards continuation, not theatrics. You don't need rigid measures of productivity that burn you out. Instead, design a flow that sustains you, an ease that makes consistency possible. When you build around your strengths, not against them, you create durability. That durability is what separates passing enthusiasm from lifelong practice. If something feels heavy, lighten it. Make it accessible. The real victory is a system you can keep for months and years, not just a week or a month. Find your anchors and protect them. If morning silence is essential, keep it sacrosanct. If a short evening walk keeps your mind clear, defend that time. These anchors become the scaffolding for everything else. They maintain your momentum when everything else gets messy. A system constructed with compassion for your present self will sustain your future self. Be willing to adjust without abandoning the core intention. Life changes and so should your patterns. Flexibility isn't failure. It's intelligence. Small tweaks preserve rhythm, large upheavals break it. Keep the foundations, consistent movement, deliberate rest, honest reflection, and adapt the details. Over time, you will have a set of practices that feel like home. When that happens, discipline isn't a struggle, it is the natural state. Don't aim for impressive. Aim for real. The most durable systems are quiet and manageable. They become part of who you are, not a badge you wear. Over time, these systems protect you from burnout, distraction, and drift. They become the reason you keep moving forward when the excitement fades. If your current routine is wearing you down, reimagine it with gentleness and precision. Build it from who you are, not from who you think you should be. When your habits become identity, you no longer have to chase discipline. You simply live it. The results follow. Day after day, pattern by pattern, your life reconfigures itself around the person you are becoming. That steady transformation is quiet, but it is undeniable. It produces deeper satisfaction than any short-lived spike of effort. Design your life to belong to you. Create patterns that fit, not force. Protect the anchors that center you. Adjust when necessary and keep the core steady. This is how you cultivate real momentum. Systems built with care will carry you through the messy, imperfect, human days. And when they do, you'll find that the life you wanted was not a future event but the result of the daily choices you made all along. You carry too much in your head. You worry about months ahead, you relive old mistakes, and you try to fix every part of your life all at once. That weight crushes your ability to act. The truth is you cannot live 3 years from now. You cannot solve next month's problems today. You cannot rewrite yesterday. The only moment you truly control is the one you are in. That moment does not need pressure. It needs presence. When you stop attempting to hold your whole life at once and start focusing on what today demands, your mind relaxes and your energy returns. Begin by narrowing your vision to the single day you have. Ask a simple question: what can I handle today that meaningfully moves me forward? Do not theorize about the year or design a perfect plan. Look at your life this morning and choose one practical thing you can do that respects your priorities. If your aim is to become healthier, identify one healthy choice you can make today. If your goal is financial discipline, choose one small action that protects your money today. If you want to rebuild confidence, do one act that makes you proud. One day, one decision, one step. That discipline removes the burden of trying to fix everything at once. When you live this way, pressure disappears. You stop stacking impossible expectations on your shoulders. You stop trying to be everything at once. You learn to be honest instead. If your day is heavy, do what you can. If your energy is low, offer up only what you have. This is not permissiveness. It is strategy. Showing up intentionally, even in a small way, adds up. It builds trust with yourself. It creates momentum. Consistency without pressure is what cements a new identity. Too many people measure progress by the distance left to travel. They wake up already behind, and that creates stress before the day begins. The antidote is presence, focusing on the task in front of you. When you make today solid, tomorrow gets lighter. When you give your attention fully to this single day, your future adjusts around the small, consistent choices you make. Narrow your focus and you will find clarity. Instead of being overwhelmed by 100 possible directions, commit to a few things that truly matter and do them with intention. It helps to simplify. Choose your priorities the night before. Decide in advance what you will do so the morning is free of endless decisions. When you limit the number of choices, your brain has more energy for meaningful work. You don't need to plan every second, you just need to decide the main things that will move your life in the right direction. A short walk, a focused work session, a clear conversation, a simple healthy meal, these are the pieces that build a calm day. Small, intentional actions are not trivial. They form the architecture of a steady life. Living by the day also protects you from the paralysis of wishing for perfect conditions. You do not need motivation to begin, you only need a clear next step. On days when you feel drained, give yourself permission to scale down the action but not to abandon it completely. Do a shorter session, a simpler version, a modest proof of progress. That low-cost commitment is often enough to break mental inertia and rebuild a sense of ownership. Over time, those small actions create a durable rhythm that outlasts fleeting feelings. Another benefit of focusing on today is the reduction of guilt and comparison. When you concentrate on your path rather than other people's highlight reels, you cease to measure yourself by outcomes you do not control. You measure by the choices you make in the present. That shift changes your internal dialogue from condemnation to curiosity. Instead of asking why you are behind, you ask what one adjustment tomorrow could bring more alignment. You stop punishing yourself for past slips and start designing the next right step. Pressure often comes from trying to predict and control too many variables. The more you try to manage, the more powerless you become because the world resists such tight control. The only power you truly possess is over your actions. Focus there. Return again and again to the question, what does today need from me? Your answer won't be glamorous, but it will be effective. It will keep you grounded. It will allow you to breathe again and act with clarity. When you practice this day-by-day approach, you will notice a steadier sense of progress. The gains are not always dramatic, but they are cumulative. You will find yourself developing patience, not as resignation but as a functional skill. Patience that understands big change is the result of consistent small choices, not bursts of frantic effort. That patience protects you from the cycle of starting strong and then collapsing under expectations that were never realistic. This mindset also helps you avoid the trap of perfectionism. Perfectionism convinces you that unless conditions are ideal, you should wait. That waiting becomes a habit. You produce less and feel worse. A day-focused system says start now, with what you have, even if it is imperfect. The act of beginning rewires your relationship with progress. It teaches your brain that action precedes feeling and that competence grows from doing, not from waiting for the feeling of readiness. Make a practice of short, honest daily reviews. At the end of each day, ask 3 simple questions. What did I do that mattered, what blocked me, and what will I do differently tomorrow? These brief reflections provide feedback that is practical and non-judgmental. They keep you oriented to the incremental adjustments that sustain forward movement. Over time, these reviews sharpen your ability to see what contributes to progress and what drains you. There will be days when the only thing you can do is rest. That is part of honoring the day. Rest is not failure. It is fuel for future action. Recognize where rest is necessary and plan for recovery. Treat it as deliberate maintenance. Build it into your system so you don't confuse necessary rest with avoidance. Both rest and effort are part of a balanced day-by-day strategy that keeps you steady. You will also face unexpected disruptions. When those come, the day-focused method gives you a simple protocol. Pause, assess the immediate need, choose one right action that preserves your main priorities, and resume. This approach reduces panic and reinstates control. You are not trying to fix everything at once. You are responding in a way that honors the present and protects what matters most. As you live like this, your judgment about time will shift. You will stop overestimating what you can accomplish in a single frantic week and start appreciating what steady action can yield in a year. The pace of true growth is slow but relentless. The difference between those who advance and those who remain stuck is rarely skill or opportunity. It is the habit of showing up daily, even on small things. Done repeatedly, day-by-day choices compound into momentum. They rearrange your circumstances in ways that only become visible after months of persistence. That delayed visibility is normal. It does not mean you failed, it means you are doing the subtle work required for lasting change. When you accept the rhythm of gradual development, you grant yourself the stamina to continue through the slow seasons. You do not need to carry the weight of your entire life at once. Do today well and trust the accumulation. Let your standards be defined by consistent action rather than immediate perfection. Choose a few essential tasks, execute them with integrity, and end the day with a small sense of accomplishment. That feeling, repeated nightly, becomes the quiet engine of transformation. When you apply this focus to your mornings, your afternoons, and your evenings, you will find that control returns to your schedule. You will wake with less dread and more clarity. You will sleep with less rumination and more satisfaction. Your capacity to handle complexity increases because you are no longer trying to hold everything simultaneously. You are acting step by step. That is where peace and progress meet. And remember, the goal is not to be perfect every day. It is to be present every day. When pressure loosens and presence grows, your system becomes resilient to setbacks. You stop reacting to every crisis and start responding from a place of intention. You create days that, when stacked, produce a life worth living. That is the power of focusing only on today. When your mind is overloaded, clarity disappears. Thoughts jumble, focus scatters, and action becomes difficult. Feeling overwhelmed is not a sign of weakness. It's a signal that your current approach is asking too much of your mental space. You can take control not by adding more tasks or motivation, but by creating simple systems that reduce the load on your brain and give you room to breathe. A frantic mind doesn't need pep talks. It needs fewer decisions, more structure, and a predictable rhythm to lean on. Start by recognizing the environments and routines that create the most friction for you. Is it the morning scramble that sets the tone for the whole day? Is it the pile of small incomplete tasks that keep nagging in the background? Is it the endless stream of notifications that break your concentration every 10 minutes? Identify one area that causes the greatest mental drain and design a compact system to neutralize it. Protecting your morning might involve a short preset flow. Wake, hydrate, stretch, and pick the single top priority. Reducing decision fatigue could mean planning meals and outfits for the week. Managing digital clutter might require a strict window for checking messages. Small, intentional predecisions remove the need for repeated weighing of options and free up your mind for work that matters. The strength of a system is in what it removes as much as in what it adds. The goal is not to create a longer list of responsibilities, but to shrink the number of active problems your brain must manage. When you design systems that automate the routine choices, you conserve willpower for the important, non-routine tasks. People who feel calm under pressure rarely rely on constant self-discipline. They design their days so that the environment does some of the heavy lifting. Their habits do not demand effort, they create momentum. Keep your systems simple and repeatable. Complexity invites breakdown, simplicity invites consistency. The best systems are those you can perform even when you are tired, stressed, or distracted. They are basic enough to execute without much thought, yet powerful enough to steady your day. Think of them as scaffolding that supports your decision-making when your mind is noisy. A brief evening routine that clears open tasks and sets 3 priorities for the next day is enough to reduce morning panic. A short weekly reset, 30 minutes on Sunday to organize and plan, can make weekdays feel manageable again. These are not grand solutions, they are small interventions that stabilize your cognitive load. When your mind is quieter, your thinking becomes sharper. You make better choices, see priorities more clearly, and act with intention instead of reactivity. This clarity allows you to focus on higher-value activities, creative work, meaningful conversations, problem-solving, because you're no longer using mental energy on trivial choices. You want to protect the attention that creates value, not spread it thin over endless small demands. An organized external environment serves as a mirror for internal order. Clear your workspace, declutter your digital environment, and you will notice an internal shift toward calmer, more effective action. Another critical system is scheduling time for stillness. Your brain is not meant to be active non-stop. Even brief moments of silence, 5 minutes of seated breathing, 10 minutes of unfocused walking, or a short pause between tasks replenish clarity. When these pockets are pre-planned and respected, they become a reliable reset button. They give your mind time to process information, let unconscious problem-solving occur, and restore the capacity for focused attention. Many people ignore these simple resets because they mistake busyness for productivity. The truth is that the most effective people build time for mental recovery into their schedules on purpose. Decision rules are a powerful tool to reduce mental friction. A decision rule is a simple criterion you use to make common choices quickly. It can be as small as, I do not check email before noon, or, I handle any message that takes less than 2 minutes immediately. These rules limit the number of times you must evaluate options and thereby reduce fatigue. When you institute clear boundaries for common interruptions and treat those boundaries as non-negotiable, you reclaim the ability to concentrate deeply and sustain effort on demanding tasks without being pulled away. Routine supports resilience. When your day follows a predictable pattern, you are better equipped to handle the unexpected without panicking. Systems provide a baseline of stability that absorbs shocks. If an urgent problem appears, you can respond from the strength of a routine rather than from a depleted state. This is not about rigidity. It is about creating a dependable foundation that keeps you functional under stress. You don't need your mind to reinvent the wheel every morning. You need to know that certain elements of your day are handled, leaving you to use your mental resources for new and important challenges. Part of calming an overwhelmed mind is reducing the pressure of perfection. Many people feel the need to solve everything right now and perfectly. That idealism creates paralysis. Systems change the expectation from perfect solutions to iterative improvements. When you commit to a process that includes feedback and adjustment, you remove the burden of having to get everything right on the first try. Iteration is the natural rhythm of effective systems. Build, test, refine. Over time, each small improvement accumulates into significant change, and you escape the paralyzing desire for immediate perfection. Another practical tool is to capture thoughts rather than try to hold them. Carrying mental notes, reminders, and worries in your head consumes cognitive bandwidth. Create a habit of writing down to-dos, concerns, and ideas as they arise. Use a single trusted place to store these items so they are not bouncing around in your mind. The act of capturing is itself calming because it signals to your brain that the information is recorded and retrievable, allowing it to stop rehearsing and begin focusing. This externalizes cognitive load and frees up attention for action. Prioritization is essential. Not everything deserves your attention. A calm mind chooses what matters now and dismisses what doesn't. Use a lens of impact to decide where to invest your energy. Small, deliberate wins in areas that compound over time produce far more benefit than scattered effort across numerous low-impact tasks. A clear prioritization system helps you say no to things that steal focus and yes to a few high-leverage actions. Protect those actions by scheduling them during your most productive hours, when your mind is at its freshest. Systems also protect against reactionary habits. When you do not have a plan for dealing with stress or triggers, you default to comfort-seeking behaviors that provide short-term relief but long-term cost. A pre-designed coping strategy, whether it's a walk, a journal prompt, or a short breathing practice, interrupts the impulse loop and gives you space to choose a better response. Over time, these healthier responses become automatic and replace the old patterns that once felt inevitable. The work of calming your mind isn't a one-time event. It's ongoing maintenance. Like any practical system, it requires occasional review and adjustment. Set a regular time to evaluate which systems are functioning, which ones need tweaks, and which ones should be retired. Keep what supports clarity, and remove what creates complexity. This maintenance mindset prevents systems from becoming outdated and ensures they continue to serve your current life rather than the person you were months ago. When you begin to experience the payoff of simpler systems, you'll notice a shift in how you approach challenges. You will feel less reactive and more intentional. The energy you once used to manage chaos becomes available for creative thought, meaningful work, and deeper relationships. Your capacity to endure stressful periods increases because you are not starting from a depleted baseline every morning. You are beginning from a place of order. That is the difference between surviving and thriving. Designing systems that calm your mind is a way of practicing respect for your future self. You're setting up conditions that make the next day easier and the next moment clearer. Each decision you automate is a kindness to the future version of you. When you look at the day ahead and know some things are already handled, you move differently. You are calmer, more decisive, and less likely to be hijacked by urgency that doesn't matter. In practice, choose one area that is causing the most mental noise and design a tiny system to address it. Keep it simple, test it for a week, and adjust. Small wins will build confidence in the approach and encourage you to add another system. Over time, the cumulative effect of these little structures is profound. You will carry less in your head, make fewer poor decisions, and create more capacity for meaningful work. You deserve a mind that can think clearly. You deserve mornings that start with intention rather than panic. You deserve evenings that end with rest rather than replay. Systems give you those things. They are not sacred rituals. They are practical tools designed to free your attention so you can focus on what truly matters. Build a few, keep them simple, refine them regularly, and watch how calmness becomes a habit rather than an occasional hope. Most people live in a loop of chasing results instead of fixing the habits that produce them. They imagine the finish line, fantasize about applause, and measure worth by outcomes that often arrive slowly or inconsistently. But results are not magic. They are the product of repeated actions over time. If your life isn't changing, it's not because you lack bigger dreams. It's because you keep repeating the same behaviors and expecting a different ending. You don't rise to your intentions. You fall to the level of your daily routines. Think of your life as a pattern, not a project. Results are the visible layer. Habits are the invisible engine. When you obsess over the outcome, you neglect the system that leads to it. You invest energy in visualization and planning, but you overlook the quiet, repetitive choices that actually move the needle. If your habits remain weak, any victory will be temporary. You might reach a goal for a brief moment, then slip back because you never corrected the underlying routine. That temporary win is not transformation. It is an exception. The real question is not how to reach a distant outcome, but what you repeat when nobody is watching. What do you do when you're tired, bored, or stressed? What do you default to in moments of distraction? Those autopilot behaviors define your future far more than your best intentions. If you want different results, start by becoming brutally honest about what you actually do on a regular basis. Observe your days without blame. Note the repetitions. That's the raw material you have to change. Fixing what you repeat requires attention and patience. It's not about stricter willpower. It's about replacement. Stop trying to stop a habit with force alone. Replace the loop with a healthier one that serves the same psychological need. If scrolling gives you a break, give yourself a short, intentional pause that restores energy without derailing your progress. If stress eating is your pattern, add a short breathing practice or a walk before you decide. The aim is to make the better option easier to reach in the moment of temptation. One practical way to start is to pick the single pattern that costs you the most energy or time and redesign it. Don't overhaul your life. Focus on one recurring behavior you can reliably change. Commit to a small, repeatable alternative and test it until it sticks. The alternative doesn't need to be dramatic. It needs to be consistent. Over time, consistency builds identity. The person who repeats small upgrades becomes someone who lives differently, not someone who only talks differently. Remember that what you repeat is a vote for who you are becoming. Each action either affirms a new identity or reinforces the old one. If you say you want to be fit but you skip movement every day, your repetition is casting a vote for an identity that doesn't match your goal. If you say you want to be calm but your routine is full of reactions, your repetition is building a nervous identity. The power of this perspective is that it makes change practical. You don't need to reinvent yourself overnight. You only need to alter what you do slightly and do it often. Fixing repetitive patterns also means setting the environment to favor the new behavior. Your surroundings have a big influence on what you do without thinking. Remove easy triggers for the old habit and add cues that make the desired habit effortless. If unhealthy snacks are the repetition you want to stop, don't keep them visible or within reach. If you want to read more, place a book near your usual seat and make it the default option. Small environment edits reduce the need for willpower and make the new repetition natural. As you begin to change these loops, track them in a simple and honest way. A daily note or a minimal tracker helps you notice whether the new behavior is actually repeating. The purpose of tracking is not to shame yourself, but to create feedback. When you see a streak, no matter how small, it encourages continuity. When you miss, you learn. The point is to create a record of repetition because change is cumulative and the evidence matters. At the same time, be realistic about the rate of change. Repetition is slow work by design. It compounds under the surface and then, over time, reveals itself in shifted outcomes. If something feels painfully slow, that can be a sign that you either chose the wrong habit to change or you're not giving it enough consistent practice. Slow is not the enemy. Hasty shifts that burn out are. The sustainable alternative is modest, repeatable improvements that you can maintain long enough to see real rewiring. Now think about the brain's reward system. It is set up to chase what gives immediate relief. If your current patterns are designed around shortcut comforts, your brain will default to them every time. You can retrain it, but the process requires you to supply smaller, earlier rewards. This is where small wins matter. They provide the brain with quick evidence that new behavior also produces satisfaction. The trick is to stack these wins daily so the brain begins to prefer progress over escape. Create opportunities for those small wins. Design a short list of daily actions you can complete that genuinely move you forward and that you can finish with intention. These should be tasks that are realistic and tied to the life you want. Each completion is a clear, immediate win. Each win sends the brain a message. This new behavior works and it feels good. Repetition makes those wins expected, not exceptional. Over time, your internal reward system will shift to crave the predictable satisfaction of progress rather than the temporary relief of avoidance. Celebration doesn't need to be elaborate. A brief pause to acknowledge the action, a note in your journal, a quick checkmark in a tracker, these tiny rituals amplify the sense of success. They tell your brain that the completion matters. If you can learn to register these moments, you will start to lean toward them because your brain is always looking for signals that something is worthwhile. You don't need outside validation when your internal evidence is consistent. Understanding the difference between mood and action is crucial. Many people wait to feel motivated before they begin. That system assures that progress will be inconsistent because moods are unpredictable. The more effective strategy is to act regardless of mood and let the feeling follow. When you choose action first, your emotions adapt to the action. This is not about denying emotion. It's about not letting emotion dictate behavior. You treat feelings as weather. They come and go, but you still move forward. Part of changing repetition is learning to act when you are not inspired. The discipline you build in those uninspired moments is what makes transformation stick. It forms a track record of reliability. A person who does essential things even when they feel flat builds a reputation with themselves. That reputation then supports bigger efforts because it proves competence. You don't need a big mood to prove your worth. You need consistent motion. Another needed shift is to stop treating results as the only metric of success. Outcomes are important, but they are delayed and often influenced by factors outside your control. Measure by behavior. Did you complete the intended repetition today? Did you follow your chosen replacement? Did you protect the environment that supports it? These are direct metrics, and they are fully within your jurisdiction. When you change what you repeat, the outcomes become secondary, because habit formation will eventually produce the result without your constant monitoring. This perspective reduces anxiety and increases resilience. You detach from immediate outcomes and anchor to the process. The peace that follows is not complacency, it is steady assurance that your daily votes are moving you in the right direction. As you progress, keep refining. Some repetitions will need tweaks. Others will need reinforcement. You will fail sometimes. Failure is not a verdict. It is information. Use it to adapt your system. Replace guilt with curiosity. Why did the repetition fail? What small change can make it more likely to happen next time? This mindset turns setbacks into data rather than drama. Ultimately, the work of fixing repetition is the work of self-authoring. It's deciding who you want to become and then choosing repeated actions that make that identity inevitable. It is slow and it is patient, but it is also the most reliable path to durable results. You will stop chasing outcomes and start building the habits that make those outcomes natural. The transformation is less showy and more reliable. It is the kind of change that holds up when life gets complicated. When the pattern of your days changes, your life changes. When your evenings, your conversations, your work sessions, and your rest patterns become aligned with new repetitions, the outcomes follow. It is not about one heroic effort. It is about tens of thousands of small, correct repetitions over time. That is real leverage. That is how you stop chasing and start arriving. Your brain learns what you reward. It notices patterns, remembers what brought comfort, and then steers you toward the quickest relief. Many people accidentally train themselves to prefer distraction, short-term comfort, and easy validation over steady progress. The good news is you can rewire that tendency. You can teach your mind to prefer forward motion instead of escape. The most reliable way to do that is to stack small daily wins until the brain begins to expect and enjoy them more than the quick fixes it used to chase. Small wins are meaningful because they are reachable and obvious. They give immediate evidence that you can follow through. When you complete something tiny yet purposeful, your brain registers a mild reward and updates its preferences. Over time, those tiny reinforcements accumulate, and your inner system starts to value progress. You begin to feel a sense of competence more often, and that sensation fuels further action. If you want your brain to crave growth, you must make growth feel familiar and rewarding in the short term. The mistake most people make is waiting for a big win to feel proud. That puts pressure on distant outcomes and makes the daily grind feel unrewarding. Instead, design your days to include 2 or 3 clear, accomplishable actions that you can complete with focus. These should be neither trivial nor unrealistic. They should move your life forward and be short enough to finish even on a bad day. When you complete them, pause. Notice the accomplishment. Let the small sense of satisfaction register. That act of recognition is the secret ingredient that trains your brain to prefer progress. Structure your environment so that these micro-wins are inevitable. Place cues where you cannot ignore them. Leave the item you need for a habit in plain sight. Make the first step of any difficult task ridiculously easy so you can win the initial friction. If reading more is your goal, put a book on the pillow where you get into bed. If movement matters, lay out your shoes beside your bed. If you want clearer mornings, place a glass of water on your nightstand. These tiny design choices reduce friction and make winning the path of least resistance. Record your wins somewhere tangible. A simple daily log, a tick mark on a paper, a single line in a notes app, these are enough. The act of writing down what you did converts fleeting actions into visible evidence. Over time, that visualization shows momentum. When you can see a string of small wins, your brain rewards continuity. It starts to prefer the predictable payoff of daily progress to the uncertain thrill of distraction. Pay attention to the pacing of rewards. Give yourself small, immediate feedback rather than deferring all celebration to the finish line. If your only reward is a far-off result, your brain will keep choosing short-term comforts that feel better now. But if you can feel good after each purposeful action, the habit becomes self-sustaining. You do not need elaborate celebrations. A brief mindful breath, a soft "well done," a quick note in your list are all effective. The social applause is optional. The internal acknowledgement is mandatory. Small wins also protect you from the trap of perfectionism. When your aim is simply to complete the next small thing, you remove the pressure to make every detail flawless. Progress becomes iterative, and improvement becomes a natural byproduct. This reduces procrastination because the barrier to start is lower and the immediate payoff is clearer. Perfectionism fades when progress is rewarded consistently, not just when outcomes are glowing and complete. To make this practical, choose a handful of micro-actions that align with what you want to build. They should answer the question, what could I realistically do today that reflects the person I want to be? Keep them visible. Keep them short. Complete them. Record them. Celebrate them. Repeat. Over time, these small actions stack into noticeable momentum. Another essential aspect is learning to design wins that change the brain's reward hierarchy. Your old habits earned a payoff quickly, which is why your brain favored them. Your new habits must offer a quicker psychological return than the old ones. You can do this by making the new action easier or by pairing it with a tiny reward the brain already enjoys. For example, if you are trying to replace mindless scrolling with reading, you might allow 5 minutes of enjoyable music only after you finish a short reading session. The point is not to bribe yourself forever, but to bootstrap the new pattern until it feels intrinsically satisfying. The practice of stacking wins also teaches something deeper: reliability. Every time you do the small thing you said you would do, you build trust with yourself. That trust is the foundation of identity. Over weeks and months, you collect examples that prove you are capable. This self-trust is what turns discipline into a habit rather than a forced exercise. When trust grows, taking the next step becomes easier because you already have proof you can follow through. Be patient and precise about what counts as a win. Ambiguous achievements like "worked hard" are less useful than concrete actions like "wrote 200 words" or "walked for 10 minutes. The clearer the action, the easier it is to measure and the more reliably it trains your brain. Precision drives momentum because it closes the feedback loop quickly and clearly. Training your brain to prefer small wins also requires protecting those wins from distraction. If you complete a task and immediately dive into something that neutralizes the satisfaction, like doom scrolling, your brain learns to prefer the distraction. So after each win, take a moment to savor it without switching to a numbing stimulus. Let the positive feeling linger. It needs that quiet space to register as a meaningful reward. This strategy also scales. As small wins accumulate, you can gradually raise the standard by adding slightly larger actions or by increasing frequency. But the key is to keep these increases moderate so that the brain continues to experience frequent positive reinforcement. Rapid escalations often lead to burnout or reversion. Incremental growth keeps the reward system aligned with progress. The power of training your brain with small wins is not just psychological. It has concrete, practical effects. When your motivation is supported by reliable feedback, your attention sharpens and your capacity for sustained effort grows. Small wins reduce the friction of entry for difficult tasks and turn initiation into the main point of success. You start to value the process itself because it consistently produces positive sensations. Another side benefit is that small wins make failure less catastrophic. When your progress is built from many small steps rather than a single all-or-nothing push, missed days or imperfect efforts are easier to absorb. You can get back on course without losing momentum because the base of evidence and habit remains. That resilience is a core advantage of a system built on micro-wins. Finally, recognize that training your brain is an active design challenge. It's not passive. It requires attention to cues, rewards, and consistency. You must decide what counts, where the cues live, how you will record success, and how you will protect the feeling of completion. It's a craftsmanship of habit formation. And like any craft, it improves with practice. Start today by identifying 3 micro-wins you can complete before noon. Do them. Note them. Let the small satisfaction land. Then repeat tomorrow. Over time, these daily choices will compound into a new orientation toward progress. You will find yourself craving the satisfaction that comes from doing the work, not from avoiding it. That shift from craving escape to craving growth is the true transformation. You wait to feel confident before you speak. You wait for motivation before you work. You wait to feel ready before you commit. That habit of waiting for emotion to lead is what keeps most people stuck. Feelings are unreliable. They fluctuate with sleep, stress, weather, and random thoughts. If you let them decide your actions, you end up spinning in place. The alternative is simple in principle. Act first and let your feelings follow. Do the right thing even when your mood resists, and over time your emotions will adapt to the behavior you create. Choosing action over feeling is not about denying your experience. It's about recognizing that emotions are not instructions. They are signals. You can listen to them, but you don't have to obey them. When you act despite resistance, you build a new kind of muscle: psychological reliability. Each time you do the uncomfortable thing, you prove to yourself that you can be trusted. That trust compounds into identity. It becomes less about the occasional surge of inspiration and more about a consistent way of living. Most people live in what I call an emotional waiting room. They tell themselves they'll begin when they feel like it, and meanwhile they keep circling the same regrets. That waiting room logic creates permission for avoidance. It trains your brain to believe that comfort is the only acceptable precursor to action. The sensible alternative is to flip the script. Use discipline when feelings are weak and let gratitude or satisfaction arrive later as a consequence. This approach is quieter but more effective. It turns discipline into a habit rather than a chore. Action reshapes feeling because behavior changes biology. Moving your body lifts chemistry and mood. Completing a task releases a subtle reward that builds momentum. Speaking up, even when nervous, often leads to relief and increased confidence. Starting a small work session, even if unfocused, clears mental fog and permits progress. In each case, action transforms the internal state in ways waiting never will. That is why doing precedes feeling in the architecture of change. There will be days when emotion wins. You are tired, sick, or grieving. Acting then will not look heroic, it will look practical. You may only manage the smallest step. That is enough. The point is not the scale of the action but the consistent direction. Even the minimal action, repeated over time, rewires expectations about how you respond. You teach yourself to be someone who keeps promises to the future self, even when the present self is resistant. A useful rule is to reduce the friction to act. When the first step is incredibly small, it's easier to begin regardless of mood. Put on shoes. Open the document. Write one sentence. Stand up and breathe deeply for 30 seconds. These small starts are tiny commitments that often lead to more. The principle is leverage. The smallest doable action is enough to shift momentum and trick the body into movement. Once motion begins, the brain usually catches up and extends the effort. Another practical tactic is to decide ahead of time what you will do when resistance appears. Pre-commitment reduces indecision. When you are tired or distracted, having a pre-decided fallback, like a 5-minute version of a task, removes negotiation. You don't ask whether to begin, you only choose the version you will do. This reduces the emotional argument and increases follow-through. Over time, the fallback options expand into full sessions naturally because the habit of starting strengthens. Emotions also change when you attach meaning to small actions. If you view the solo effort as a vote for the person you want to become, the action gains purpose beyond immediate feeling. That meaning is the bridge from momentary discomfort to long-term identity. It reframes a small action from a nuisance into an act of self-respect. That shift in meaning matters because humans tend to maintain behaviors that align with their self-image. When your actions are consistent with the identity you choose, feelings are less likely to derail you. Practice gentleness with yourself during the process. Acting despite feeling poorly is not a mandate for harshness. When you act and falter, respond with curiosity. What made it hard today? What can make it easier tomorrow? Use compassion to refine your system, rather than to excuse inaction permanently. This balance, firmness in action and compassion in interpretation, creates sustainable discipline. You do not build resilience by berating yourself. You build it by designing situations where action is the natural path. One of the reasons people wait for feelings is that they assume action must be grand to matter. That misunderstanding fuels procrastination. The truth is the tiniest actions, when repeated, produce enduring change. If your standard for activity is too high, you will constantly defer to emotional readiness. Lower the bar and you will find your way forward. The low bar is not a retreat, it is a strategy to ensure consistency. Language matters. When you say, "I will wait until I feel ready," you give emotion veto power. When you say, "I will do the next right thing," you make a different commitment. The phrasing shifts responsibility from mood to choice. Replace conditional language with action language. Instead of, "I need to feel motivated," say, "I will show up for 15 minutes. Instead of, "I'll start when I have energy," say, "I'll begin with a simple step." These verbal shifts structure behavior and reduce the brain's permission to avoid. Long-term change is built on repeated instances of choosing action over feeling. It is not glamorous. It is small and steady. It requires boredom tolerance and a willingness to do unremarkable things that add up. But that is precisely its power. It is resistant to mood swings because it does not rely on them. Identity becomes rooted in consistent behavior rather than in emotion. That root supports greater courage, creativity, and calm over time. There are social strategies that help as well. Telling someone you respect that you will do the work creates external accountability. When you inform a friend or a coach, you increase the cost of avoidance and the probability of action. Choose accountability partners who understand your values and will support the routine you intend to build. Social reinforcement complements internal reliability and makes actions more likely on low-feeling days. Finally, recognize that feelings will often follow action in surprising ways. A small step can reduce anxiety, a brief conversation can build courage, a 5-minute effort can rekindle focus. These shifts are not magical, they are the predictable results of moving through experience. Let your behavior be the engine that produces emotional change, not the excuse that waits for emotion to arrive. If today feels heavy, choose one small, meaningful action and do it. Not because you feel like it, but because your future self will thank you. Each time you act without waiting, you make the next action slightly easier. You build a history of reliability that reshapes who you are. Over time, the pattern becomes less about resisting feelings and more about trusting the process. Action first, feeling second. This is the practical path to consistency, growth, and a life defined by choice rather than by fluctuating mood. Overthinking drains your energy and slows you down. When your mind is full of options, doubts, and what-ifs, simple tasks turn heavy and decisions become threats. The more you spin in your head, the less you act, and the slower progress becomes. The antidote is not to think harder but to design a routine that gives your brain fewer things to worry about. A clear daily flow reduces choice overload, conserves mental energy, and creates space for focused action. Begin by making the start of your day predictable. The first 30 to 60 minutes set the tone. If you wake and immediately face a barrage of decisions, your brain starts the day exhausted. Instead, create a short, gentle sequence you follow every morning. It doesn't need to be heroic, only steady. Movement, a breath, a quick review of your top priority. These predictable steps remove the need to decide under low willpower. When your morning is reliable, the rest of the day inherits that clarity. You no longer spend energy on trivial choices because some of them are already decided for you. Next, simplify midday choices. Decide the essentials in advance so your brain isn't forced into constant evaluation. Choose your meals, your work blocks, and your rest windows the night before. When your basic framework is set, your attention can be devoted to the tasks that require it most. This is not about rigid scheduling but about minimizing friction where it matters least. By pre-deciding small items, you prevent them from multiplying into mental noise that undermines deeper work. Limit the number of open loops you carry. Open loops are unfinished commitments that keep resurfacing in thought. Each one taxes your working memory and reduces bandwidth for creative or analytical tasks. Use a trusted capture method to empty your mind, a single notebook or a notes app where you put ideas, reminders, and tasks as they arise. The act of recording is calming because it tells your brain the thought is stored and retrievable. You stop rehearsing it mentally and gain immediate clarity. Structure your day into focused blocks with clear objectives. Time blocking doesn't mean every minute is scheduled. It means you allocate parts of the day to specific types of work. When you assign an hour to deep concentration, your brain learns to enter a different mode in that block, rather than constantly switching contexts. Fewer task switches equal higher productivity and less mental chatter. Protect those blocks fiercely. Treat them like appointments with a high-value client, yourself. Reduce decision points with simple rules. Decision rules are compact commitments that remove deliberation. For instance, decide not to check email until a set time or to only respond to messages in designated windows. These rules are small guardrails that keep your attention from fragmenting. When distractions are managed by rules rather than willpower, your mind can settle into sustained focus. Rules do not need to be permanent. They can be seasonal adjustments that reflect what you currently need to protect mental energy. Your physical and digital environment should support your routine. A cluttered desk, a messy inbox, and constant notifications feed overthinking. Declutter the spaces you use most and set boundaries for interruptions. Turn off non-essential alerts, archive what you don't need to see, and create clear folders or lists so decisions about priority are straightforward. Your environment can either fight you or help you. Make it a co-conspirator in your effort to think less and do more. Block time for rest and recovery as deliberately as you block time for work. Overthinking often comes from mental fatigue. When your brain is tired, it tries to solve everything at once. Short, scheduled breaks reduce cognitive load and improve clarity. These breaks are not indulgences, they are strategic resets. A 5-minute walk, a stretch, or a brief moment of silence allows your mind to process in the background and return refreshed. The rhythm of work and recovery is what sustainable high performance looks like. Create a nightly routine that closes the day and prepares the next. Overthinking at night is common because unanswered questions linger. A short evening practice, write down the 3 things you will handle tomorrow, clear your workspace, and put devices away, reduces the brain's need to churn. When the next steps are on paper, your mind can relax. The night is for recovery, not for unresolved decision-making. Protect it by doing a small end-of-day ritual that signals closure. Use constraints to reduce choice. Constraints are powerful because they limit the number of directions your brain can go, which decreases overanalysis. If you limit your options for meals, clothes, or work tools, you free your mind to focus on meaningful decisions. Constraints are not limitations on creativity, they are fuel for execution. The fewer trivial options you face, the more energy you have for the essentials. Teach your brain to respond to signals rather than to feelings. Feelings fluctuate and often trigger a search for more information. Signals are fixed. Start at this time, stop at that time, take a break. When your day is organized around signals, your brain can act without debating whether it feels like it. This reduces the internal argument that often turns into overthinking. Signals create clarity and momentum because they convert preference into action. Limit the amount of future you try to hold in your head. Overplanning is a cousin of overthinking. You cannot manage months of detail in an afternoon. Use broad annual or monthly goals as direction and delegate the daily specifics to your routine. Your routine is the mechanism that translates the large plan into small, manageable steps. Trust that structure to carry the weight of implementation so your mind can focus on the present. When you notice overthinking creeping in, use a simple interruption technique. Note the thought, record it, and move to the next required action. This practice trains your mind to externalize worry and return to doing. Over time, you'll weaken the habit of circling in thought because you have a reliable method for handling it. The goal is not to suppress thoughts but to process them efficiently so they no longer hijack your attention. Make room for unstructured thinking in controlled doses. Allowing your mind some free, wandering time can be productive, but it should be scheduled rather than accidental. A weekly walk where you let your mind wander or a short session for open reflection can yield insight without turning into obsessive rumination. Structured unstructured time gives the brain permission to explore without letting it default to anxiety-producing loops. Be mindful of your consumption. What you read, watch, and scroll shapes the way your brain operates. Constant exposure to conflicting opinions and urgent updates fuels overthinking. Curate inputs intentionally. Schedule when and how you engage with news, social media, and commentary. Limiting noisy inputs protects your thinking space and reduces the tendency to overanalyze. Practice making decisions faster on low-stakes items to build decisiveness. Set a timer and give yourself 1 or 2 minutes to choose on matters that are not critical. This trains your brain to accept that not every decision requires exhaustive analysis. Over time, the habit of quicker, adequate decisions transfers to more important choices, reducing overall cognitive overhead. Finally, be willing to revise your routine when it stops serving you. Routines are living tools. They need maintenance and adaptation. Periodically review what parts are helping and which parts are creating new friction. Adjust with small experiments rather than sweeping changes. This iterative approach prevents the anxiety that comes from feeling locked into an unhelpful system. Design your day so your brain doesn't have to be a decision factory. Make mornings predictable, midday choices pre-decided, and nights restorative. Capture open loops, protect focus blocks, and use rules to fend off distraction. Build rest into your schedule, limit inputs, and allow small windows for free thinking that are bounded and intentional. When your external structure carries some of the load, your internal life loosens. Overthinking subsides and thoughtful action takes its place. If you apply these principles, you will find your mind less cluttered and more effective. You will spend less time replaying conversations and more time creating work that matters. Your routine will not be a cage, it will be a framework that lets your best work happen without constant internal debate. Reduce the choices that don't matter and protect the choices that do. Over time, the peace you build with your routine becomes a force multiplier for your creativity, productivity, and calm. Sticking with a system is easy when the signs of progress are visible, when others notice, and when the early wins make you feel like everything is paying off. But real change rarely unfolds in a straight, visible line. It often moves slowly beneath the surface, in small structural shifts you can't measure day by day. The moment when most people quit is not usually when the plan is proven unworkable. It is when the external reward is delayed and doubts creep in. This is the test moments are designed to reveal who you really are. If you give up the system because results are quiet, you never get to the phase where cumulative effort produces visible movement. Staying with the process when outcomes are slow is how you separate the temporary from the permanent. Understand that a slow result is not a failed experiment. Many deep changes are internal long before they show externally. New habits strengthen neural pathways, raise baseline discipline, and reorganize priorities long before the measurable outcomes arrive. If you only persist while applause exists, you will only ever experience the easy phases. The stronger route is to value the invisible architecture the system is building. The quiet work, consistency on days no one notices, small acts repeated without praise, is doing the real heavy lifting. The visible reward will come later, and it will be more stable because it was supported by a foundation, not by a burst of effort. Patience is not passive. It is a form of strategic endurance. It requires you to keep doing what works even when it feels unrewarding. Many people confuse waiting with inaction. Waiting with intention means continuing the routine, evaluating data honestly, and resisting the urge to rescue the outcome with frantic, impulsive changes. Short-term tinkering often feels productive because it brings novelty and the illusion of movement, but it rarely compounds. Systems that last are the ones you maintain through the quiet seasons. They are the scaffolding that survives storms, not the flashy solution that vanishes after a week. When results are slow, your most useful move is to simplify and double down on the fundamentals. Complicating the system rarely accelerates progress. Instead, focus on the core actions that produce the most leverage. This is not about doing more tasks, it's about identifying the few behaviors that, when repeated, shift your trajectory. Reduce the noise of experimentation and give the key practices the time they need to build momentum. The temptation to add more often comes from impatience. Resist it. Trust the compound power of consistent, basic work. A practical advantage of sticking with a system is that it trains your patience muscle. The ability to persist without immediate feedback is one of the clearest predictors of long-term success. When you practice patience, you develop emotional steadiness. You stop treating every setback as a signal of permanent failure and start interpreting it as a normal part of a growth curve. This steadiness prevents you from oscillating between frenetic effort and resignation. Instead of being reactive to short-term results, you become responsive to process. Measure progress differently when results are delayed. If you only observe macro outcomes, you're blind to necessary micro changes. Instead of asking whether the final goal is near, track adherence and the quality of execution. Did you complete the essential tasks? Did you protect the routines that matter? Did you maintain the process through disruption? These process-oriented measures are under your control, and they provide real evidence that the system is functioning even when outcomes are quiet. Over time, a steady pattern of execution translates into outcome shifts, even if the timing is not spectacular. Another critical element is the management of expectation. Many people give up because their timeline for change is unrealistic. Society amplifies stories of rapid success, which creates a distorted baseline for what to expect. Reframe your timeline to account for the depth of the change you want. Deep shifts often mirror deep investment. If your ambition is significant, your timeline must reflect that. Expect seasons of visible progress and seasons where the work is mostly invisible. Anticipating those cycles helps you remain committed because you no longer treat every slow week as a crisis. When you continue despite slow progress, you build resilience. Resilience is not simply the ability to endure, it's the capacity to learn while persisting. Use slow seasons to refine your methods, strengthen your habits, and deepen your understanding. Ask better questions. What part of the system is actually changing? Where is there friction? What small adjustment could improve consistency without derailing the core? These are not excuses to overhaul the plan, but invitations to increase efficiency and clarity. Small, precise tweaks keep the process alive while preserving the compounding effect of repetition. Community and accountability can be powerful supports when patience is required. Sharing the process with people who understand the long game reduces the sense of isolation that often accompanies slow progress. A peer who values the system more than the outcome can remind you why you started and help normalize the invisible advances. Choose accountability partners who respect slow growth and who will celebrate the quiet, consistent actions as much as the public wins. That kind of social environment reduces the temptation to chase instant validation. If the system is genuinely failing, you should be willing to change, but this needs to be an intentional decision based on evidence, not an impulsive reaction to discomfort. Establish a clear testing period and measurable criteria for evaluating whether a system is working. Use data from the process, consistency, energy levels, incremental milestones, to inform whether the structure needs a pivot. A pivot is strategic when the evidence shows the current approach is not producing desired intermediate signals. However, swapping systems because of impatience will always be a mistake. Distinguish between thoughtful iteration and seeking novelty for consolation. Embrace the humility of slow development. Big achievements rarely occur as single moments of genius. They result from sustained alignment between your daily habits and your highest priorities. When progress feels slow, remind yourself that the path of least resistance is rarely the path that leads to meaningful change. The hard but valuable work is staying consistent through seasons where external validation is absent. That is the moment your character is forged and your future self is created. A useful mental model is to view your work as soil cultivation rather than immediate harvest. You are preparing the ground, seeding, watering, and tending. Much of the biological process happens out of sight. You do not see roots growing beneath the surface, but without that hidden work the plant will never thrive. Adopt the same patience for your systems. Trust that the time you invest now is nurturing unseen infrastructure. When the right conditions align, growth will accelerate because the foundation has been prepared. Resisting the urge to abandon a system when results are slow also protects your self-trust. Every time you stop a plan at the first sign of delayed reward, you reinforce a belief that consistency is optional and that feelings are the arbiter of action. If you want someone who can carry through on extended commitments, practice carrying through when it's unglamorous. Keeping promises to yourself in quiet seasons builds identity capital. That capital pays large dividends later because it becomes a resource you can rely on when circumstances demand persistence. Recognize that visible outcomes are often the product of cumulative micro-decisions that eventually reach a threshold. That threshold moment can appear sudden, but it is always the result of consistent accumulation. Your job is to keep adding to the sum, not to panic when the ledger doesn't immediately reflect the deposits. Maintain faith in the process by acknowledging small wins that indicate forward motion even if the big picture seems unchanged. Celebrate evidence of habit formation, improvements in focus, reductions in friction, and qualitative shifts in how you handle tasks. These are the markers of eventual success. When the external world pressures you to move faster, stay committed to the pace that your system requires. Short-term acceleration often sacrifices sustainability. Be willing to accept modest immediate results for the sake of long-term continuation. This is the paradox of slow work. It feels like you're underperforming in the moment while you are actually investing in durable performance for the future. That kind of delayed gratification is rare, and as a result it produces outsized long-term advantage. Finally, re-anchor to purpose. Systems are easier to maintain when they are tied to a clear, personal reason. If the why is compelling, it provides fuel on days when the how feels weak. Revisit that reason regularly and let it inform the small, daily commitments. The clearer and more personal the purpose, the less likely you are to abandon the process when results are quiet. Purpose aligns your behavior to a horizon that is bigger than temporary disappointment, and that alignment is the strongest predictor of endurance. Now, let your habits do the talking. Saying what you want to change is easy. Living it is the test. People announce ambitions loudly and then assume the work will follow. It rarely does. Habits are the silent language that tells others and, more importantly, yourself, who you are. When your routines are aligned with your goals, you no longer need to explain or justify your direction. Your behavior becomes the evidence. You stop making proclamations and start producing results, because the small, repeated acts of your day become louder than any promises you once made. Consider the difference between an occasional intense effort and steady repetition. The dramatic push feels good in the moment, but it is often unsustainable. It burns energy, creates a temporary spike in performance, and then collapses into fatigue or resentment. Consistency, by contrast, builds an underlying baseline. It increases competence in small increments until your capability is no longer fragile. People who succeed over the long term are not those who had the largest bursts of effort. They are those who trusted the slow accumulation of ordinary actions. That trust is born from the daily decision to choose a system over a headline. If you want to live in a way that makes your goals inevitable, begin with small, non-negotiable rituals that reflect that future. These rituals do not have to be impressive. In fact, they should be deliberately modest so that they are easy to repeat. The point is not to impress other people. The point is to create a track record you can rely on. Each time you complete a ritual, you deposit a bit of identity capital. Over months and years, that capital compounds into a character you can trust. When the stakes rise, you do not invent discipline. You draw on the reserves built by your habits. Habits are also honesty. They reveal which values truly matter to you because actions are less malleable than words. If you claim to value rest but regularly sacrifice sleep for busy work, your pattern tells a different story. If you say relationships matter but you rarely make time for meaningful conversations, your routine contradicts your values. Use this clarity as a compass. Let your habits be the immediate feedback that corrects any misalignment between what you say and what you do. This is not meant to induce shame but to provide a clear path forward. Change what you repeat and your life will follow. When refining habits, make the replacement as frictionless as possible. If you are trying to stop an old loop, put the new option where the old trigger used to be. Environmental design is less glamorous than willpower, but far more effective. Your surroundings do much of the work for you. Remove the easy pathways to the habits you want to leave behind and create obvious cues for the ones you want to adopt. Over time, these engineered nudges take the weight off your decision-making and let your behavior shift without constant struggle. Do not wait for the ideal moment to start building these habits. The perfect conditions rarely come. Life is messy, complicated, and unpredictable. Waiting for a calm window is an invitation to procrastination. Instead, start where you are with what you can manage. The initial steps will look imperfect and small, and that is precisely why they work. Imperfection creates realism. Realism creates continuity. The person who waits for everything to be perfect will never accumulate the small, consistent acts that produce real transformation. As you practice these habits, pay attention to the stories you tell yourself. Narratives about identity shape behavior. If your inner voice says, "I am not someone who can follow through," you will find evidence to confirm that claim. But if you begin to collect small experiences of follow-through, you will have new stories to tell yourself. Short, factual accounts that shift identity gently but powerfully. Replace sweeping judgments with simple factual records. Today, I did what I said. Tomorrow, say it again. These moments of truth, when gathered, change your internal narration from excuse to evidence. Habits also require a baseline of compassion. You will fail sometimes. That is inevitable. The test of a strong system is not that failure never occurs, but that when it does you respond without catastrophic judgment. Treat setbacks as data points. Learn what caused the slip without turning it into a character verdict. Then adjust the system to make the next attempt easier. The goal is not moral perfection, it is reliable practice. Over time, the compassionate approach produces more durable change because it reduces the shame that otherwise fuels avoidance. Another practical principle is to connect habits to identity, not to external results. When your behavior is wired to who you are, quitting becomes less likely because the action becomes part of your self-conception. Say to yourself, not "I exercise to lose weight," but "I am the kind of person who moves their body consistently." The difference is subtle but profound. The first depends on an external metric for validation. The second is internally coherent and self-sustaining. Identity-based habits are resilient because they align behavior with a story about who you already are becoming. Make room for routine evolution. Habits are not static relics. They should grow with you. The rituals that worked in one season might not fit another. That is not failure. It is calibration. Check in periodically with your systems and ask whether they still serve your priorities. If not, tweak them in small ways rather than discarding everything. Minor adjustments preserve the momentum while aligning the practice with your current reality. This iterative mindset prevents the all-or-nothing swings that often derail long-term progress. Measure progress in ways that matter to the practice, not just the outcome. Tracking the small actions, how many days you completed a ritual, how often you chose the healthier option, provides immediate feedback that encourages continuation. Outcomes may lag behind, but the trail of actions is visible. When you look back at months of small completions, the change is often clear even if it did not feel obvious day to day. Use that record to encourage yourself and to inform future adjustments. There is also power in public quietness rather than public performance. You do not have to broadcast every intention or progress report. When your habits are private and consistent, they are less vulnerable to the volatility of external feedback and more aligned with intrinsic motivation. Share strategically when you need support or accountability, but do not make the presence of an audience a requirement for action. The most sustainable discipline is sovereign. It does not rely on applause. As your habits solidify, your freedom increases. Structure gives you the liberty to focus on what matters. When basic routines are automatic, they free your attention for creative work, deeper relationships, and more expansive goals. The paradox of habit is that the more fixed certain patterns become, the more optional other activities can be. You gain the capacity to choose with clarity because the background processes are reliable. Remember that long-term work is rarely glamorous. It is the steady accumulation of small acts that looks dull in the moment and remarkable in retrospect. The people who build lasting lives do not always have the most intense episodes of effort. They have the longest histories of continuity. That continuity is built on daily choices that stack into competence, stability, and trust. Trust in yourself is perhaps the most valuable asset you can create because it underpins every future decision. One simple test before you end each day. Did you act in a way that supports your future self? If yes, rest. If not, consider one tiny adjustment for tomorrow. This micro-reflection keeps your habits honest without overwhelming your attention. It focuses you on the next right step rather than on distant, abstract achievements. Habit formation is not about radical reinvention. It is about dozens of short, correct choices that, when repeated, shape a life you can be proud of. Finally, remember that the journey of habit is shared. Seek companionship with people who value consistency and who understand the quiet labor of growth. Communities of practice, whether formal or informal, provide encouragement and normalize the slow seasons. When others model the steady path, it becomes easier to weave your own practices into a sustainable life. Let your habits do the work of proof. Let the record of daily action speak louder than declarations. Over time, your life will answer for itself through the steady, invisible accumulation of small, right behaviors.